So, have you heard about colonialism? I'm sure we all heard about colonialism, right? I think we're going to go very specifically today about a very specific type of colonialism. Colonialism happened in Africa in 1884 when Europeans went to Berlin in Germany to sit down and have a discussion. What was the discussion about? The discussion was about going to Africa. Africa, this big land filled with savages, with so much goods, gold, diamonds, cobalt, uranium, you name it. We Europeans need to go get that stuff. However, how are we going to do this? We're going to go get that stuff in one condition. What condition? In condition that we don't fight each other over there. Why? Because Europeans spent centuries of unaliving each other in Europe. You know, France fighting England, England fighting Portugal, Portugal fighting Spain. They did not want to redo that in Africa. That's why they sat there. They created what they call colonialism. How? They went to Africa and they split Africa into small pieces. That's what you call countries today. Those countries never existed before 1884. There was no country. It was just a massive land like this one, with hills and forests and savannas and trees and waters and rivers and tribes and ethnic groups and human beings. So, were the humans there? Yes, there were lots of humans divided by tribes and ethnic groups and clans and stuff like that. But countries never existed. Now, how did the country start in Africa? Well, because England said they wanted these lands. You see all these land on the map? That's were part of the British. These countries you see here were colonized by French. These ones by the Portuguese, and so forth. So they sat around the table discussing on how to split Africa without Africans. They renamed these places, these lands, gave them names they chose, completely changing. I mean, some countries now are reclaiming their own names, like Swaziland. This is Swaziland right here. You know, it's a kingdom. Now it's called Eswatini. They say, no, we're not playing that game with you anymore. You named my child for me? There's no way. I'm calling it back Eswatini. Well, many other African countries have not done that yet. Now we got the context. We're together. I see you. I know you all over the place, from the United States of America, from the Caribbeans. We need to be on the same page. This is family. Okay? There's no bashing each other here when it comes to knowledge. We all want to get a little piece of knowledge so we can move forward. Great stuff. Now, let's understand this. That is when colonialism started. Colonialism was about looting Africa, taking the goods back to Europe, okay, enriching Europe with Africa's goods. In the meantime, beat up the savages, teach them a bit of English, a bit of French here and there, a bit of Portuguese, so they can serve you best. That was the objective. Now, France took many countries in Africa, these countries here, colonized by France. They beat up people really, really bad. They unalived them. They forced them into labor and many other things. Now, up until today, did you know that 14 African countries still pay colonial tax back to France? Colonial tax. Let me explain. 14 African countries forced by France to pay colonial tax for the benefit of slavery and colonization. Yeah, you heard me right. For the benefit of slavery and colonization. So you benefited from slavery and colonization. You have to pay us back, my brother. Yeah, that's the idea. Now, if you don't pay, guess what's going to happen to you? Well, your leader is probably going to get unalive, or your country is going to suffer. Because over there, unlike you, they understand and work with one another. It doesn't matter what the policy is, whether it's good or evil. In Europe, they understand and work with each other, whilst Africans are fighting each other. That's what it is. Now, what was happening back in time? So for many, many years, many European countries colonized African nations, separating Africans into English-speaking groups to French-speaking groups and Portuguese and more. Before Africans learned each other's languages so they can communicate. When they came, they split Africa into parts and blocks, where some of these countries only spoke English. English became the language to learn. Some of those countries learned French. French became the language to learn. Up until today, you can see a difference in behavior between Africans from French-speaking Africa and Africans from British-speaking Africa, or English. Yes. In 1960s, decolonization started. It was a bit of a situation where many European nations had to leave African nations without necessarily wanting to do so, but they were kind of forced to do it. Now, France said, we're going to give you freedom and independence, but in one condition. You need to sign a piece of paper. What piece of paper? Okay, the real pact. That is the post-colonial tax for the benefit of slavery and colonization. Of course, I taught you how to eat pizza, stinky cheese, pasta, how to cook bacon and eggs and stuff like that. So you better pay me for that. Oh, by the way, I taught you how to speak French. Now you can pronounce. You've forgotten your mother's tongue and your grandfather's language and your culture. You got now my religion. You're not praying to your ancestors anymore. You gotta pay me for that because you used to be just a few savages. Now, there was a choice. You're either gonna pay or you're gonna perish. That was the reality. It wasn't official. It was not official. But you're gonna pay this money they require, or you're gonna be part of a French community in Africa. So they created a community. The French community or full independence. Now, if you're part of the French community, you accept what's going to happen. Military engagement means that France had to keep its military in several African countries that signed. The country that signed a community with France will have to keep France soldiers over there. Now, you ask yourself a question, why would an independent country, or why would France, let's say, want to keep its soldiers in all these African countries? Well, it's very simple. In case a country doesn't work to the advantage of France, they have military over there, they can just go shut them up. In case there's a political leader that's big mouth, anti-French rhetoric, they just organize and go and unalive him. It's very easy. No need to fly somebody from France all over. It costs too much money in logistics. So the advantage of African nations that are accepted to be part of the French community is that the French military could intervene militarily and maintain order in your country should there be mayhem. So break down protests and anything else. But also, in the same token, they will shut down anybody that's anti-French. Before you get independence, you need to sign for economic control, meaning France will start printing your currency for you. Yes, and 60% of your revenue is going to be lodged in France. Yes, you, the independent country, you need to be part of the community. We're going to keep our soldiers in your land, and we need to print your currency that's going to be linked to our currency. So all your benefits, we're getting from them. Our benefits are ours. So that is the reason why many African nations, as you see today, use this money here. It's called the CFA franc. It's controlled by the French treasury. And you're talking about freedom. Are you really free? I don't know, my brother. France had first right to buy natural resources from these countries, like oil, uranium, and timber. Yeah, France buys first before anybody else comes, and France establishes the price. In Niger, remember Niger? This is Niger, yeah. France used to buy uranium from Niger. Uranium is one very important thing. I mean, you can use it for many, many things, including cancer treatment, nuclear power, nuclear bomb, and electricity. So France was making electricity from the uranium they bought from Niger. They made so much electricity, they started selling electricity to other European countries. In the meantime, in Niger, in this country, they had no electricity. Yeah, they slept in the dark while France was buying the uranium at a very cheap price. Just for context, France bought uranium from Niger at 0.80 cents a kilogram. In the meantime, they paid $200 a kilogram from the same quality uranium from Canada. Let me repeat myself. 0.80 cents per kilogram for the people of Niger and $200 a kilogram for Canada. That's how they think about you. Right now, Niger's got a brand new government, and this brand new government abolished this, and France is not very happy. That's just to show you how they operated. So France had the first right to choose. They will choose who's going to buy, how they're going to buy, when they're going to buy, how much they're going to buy the good from a free African nation. Those were countries associated to the French community. France advisors remain embedded in key ministries of African nations like defense, economy, education, and more. So your defense had an advisor from France. Your education had an advisor from France. Make sure that you educate people the French way, or at least the way that's good for the French people. Your economy department is a French advisor. Make sure your economy moves in a way that is beneficial to France. There was another group of people that wanted free independence. Well, free independence, you can get it, but you must be paying France back money for educating you for colonialism and slavery. Brother, you've probably never heard of these things. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. Now, let's see what France has done in many of these countries. I'm not creating this. This is not the entire French sentiment. We're just going back into history and narrating what's happened. When Sékou Touré of Guinea decided in 1958 to get out of French colonial empire, Sékou Touré was the first president of Guinea. He opted for the country's independence instead of community of France. Then what happened? The French colonial elite in Paris got very furious. In fact, the French administration in Guinea destroyed everything in the country which represented what they had called the benefit from French colonization. So they don't want to work with you anymore. Instead of saying, okay, thank you very much, we're leaving, we can allow you to be free, they destroyed everything they had built in that country. Everything. They took everything that belonged to them. Cars, infrastructure, the things that could not be moved were completely destroyed by the French. 3,000 French left the country, taking all properties, destroying anything that which could not be moved, including schools, nursery, public administration, buildings were crumbled, cars, books, medicine, research institute instruments, tractors were crushed and sabotaged, horses, cows in the farms were killed, and food in warehouses were burnt or poisoned. My brother. Yes, this is the truth. You can go check for yourself. You know, this has not changed very much. I don't know. Have you ever been to a French website or French-speaking news? They ask you for accepting cookies. This is, you can go check that now. You accept, go check La Rousse. Okay, you can accept cookies. If you don't accept cookies, they kick you out of the website. You know that? So if you're gonna do something for me, if you don't do something for me, you're not getting anything. As opposed to what? As opposed to other websites, generally British or other places, where you can actually click. They ask you to click on cookies. You say you don't want to accept cookies. They still allow you to read. In some websites, they will allow you to control partially the website. You can actually scroll down, but you don't have full access. But most French website will kick you off. Okay, so you're not going to give us business, we're not going to get money from you, you can get the hell out. This is a very similar mentality we're seeing right here. The purpose of this was very clear. Send a message. You're either going to be part of the French community, you know, give us power to your currency, give us power to your military, your economy, or else you get full independence. We're going to destroy everything we built here with you or without you in your country. Slowly, fear spread through African elites, and none after the Guinea event even found the courage to follow Sékou Touré's example, whose slogan was, "We prefer freedom in poverty than opulence in slavery." That was Sékou Touré. We prefer freedom in poverty to opulence in slavery. Unfortunately, not many Africans think this way. They just want money. Okay, they don't care anymore. Matter of fact, you know what happened again? Something very interesting. Sékou Touré said, I don't want to use the CFA franc. Let us print our own money. You know what happened? What happened was the French took copies of that money. They created fake currencies of the money Sékou Touré. Yes, fake currencies. They inserted it maliciously in the country to try to create inflation. You know, the more there's money, the more it has no value. They put a lot of that money in the market of that country, so that they can crush their dream, because they chose not to go with the CFA franc. Another person named Sylvanus Olympio. He was the first president of the Republic of Togo. Togo is this country right here, tiny country in West Africa. They had found a middle ground solution with the French. What did Sylvanus do? He didn't want his country to continue to be a French dominion. Therefore, he refused to sign the colonization continuation pact with De Gaulle. De Gaulle is this man. This is the man that said, you better sign or you're gonna, this man right here. Matter of fact, he's the man that took with him Africans to go fight the war for him, World War II. And then he sent them back to a place to get shot. This guy, instead of paying them money and salaries. He's also the guy that said that if you want to get freedom, you're going to sign this pact of thanking them for colonization. What did Sylvanus do? Sylvanus agreed to pay an annual debt to France for the so-called benefits Togo got from the French colonization. So he agreed. He said, I'm going to pay you every year, because it was the only condition for the French not to destroy the country before leaving. However, the amount was estimated at about 40% of the budget of the country in 1963 at the time. 40% of the budget had to be paid off. I mean, how do you function? It's impossible. And because it was very difficult, he decided to get out of the colonial money, the CFA franc, hoping to do very similar thing as Sékou Touré. On January 13, 1963, 3 days after he started printing his country's own currency, a squad of illiterate soldiers backed by France killed the first elected president of newly independent African. Olympio was killed by ex-French Foreign Legionnaire Army surgeon called Etienne Nyasimbe, who supposedly received a bounty of $612 from local French embassy. So a local guy, an African man, received $612 from the French embassy to go and unalive another person who's sending strong for their interest. Then when I tell you don't call me my brother, you say, oh, why? No, my man, this is how you do to each other. I know France was wrong, absolutely wrong, for trying to push him in a corner because the man wanted freedom. They said, because you want freedom, we're going to unalive you using your own people. How did they get to, yeah. When last did a European person kill another European person for the interests of Asians or Indians or Africans or any other thing? I don't understand how you function. I'm sorry. Olympio's dream was to build an independent, self-sufficient, self-reliant country, but the French didn't like the idea. That's how you function with France. I'm sorry. People talk about France anti-sentiment. We're just talking about history. Nothing new. We're not creating it. You can double check all this information online. On June 30th, 1962, Modibo Keïta, the first president of the Republic of Mali, Mali, we've spoken about Mali many times, he decided to withdraw from the French colonial currency, the CFA franc, as well. He followed up after Guinea and Togo. He said, I also want to pull off this CFA franc. You can't make me use money I didn't want or choose. It doesn't make sense. But the money was imposed to 12 African countries. For the Malian president, who was leaning more towards socialism, the influence of the Russians at the time, it was clear that colonization continuation pact with France was a trap, a burden for the country development, and he did not want this. Yes, my brother. However, in November 19th, 1968, something really bad happened to him. Keïta will be victim of a coup carried by another ex-French foreign legionnaire, the Lieutenant Moussa Traoré. Now, this is an African again. These Africans went to train military staff with France. That's the French legionnaire. French legionnaire group are just military from foreign nations that train with the French, but they're still under France. So anybody can come from Togo, Burundi, Zambia, go train with the French legionnaire. You recognize, but you still get stuff from them. But you're still African. Okay, so they can communicate with you, give you some money and say, go kill your own brother. That's what happened again. In fact, during that turbulent moment, France will repeatedly use many ex-foreign legionnaires to carry out coups against elected presidents in Africa. There were major coups in Central Africa by Mwekassa, a major coup by Maurice Emeogo, first president of the Republic of Burkina Faso at the time, was carried out by Abubakar Sangoulé Lamizana. It's always African against another African. Yeah. Don't get me started. In fact, brother, 50 years, during the last 50 years, a total of 67 coups happened in 26 countries in Africa. 67 coups in 50 years. Okay? And 16 of those 26 countries are French colonies. That's 60%. So if you do things for your people, you're gone. I'm not creating this. I'm not inventing. This is history. You can go double check for yourself. In March 2008, Europeans always make us feel like Africa is such a poor continent. They need water. They ain't got no food. And whatever. They say, this is the president. His name is Jacques Chirac, ex-president of France. In 2008, he said, without Africa, France will slide down into the rank of a third world country.
A large part of the money in our wallets comes precisely from the exploitation of Africa over centuries. Not only, but a lot of it comes from the exploitation of Africa.
Now, his predecessor named François Mitterrand already prophesied in 1957 that without Africa, France will have no history in the 21st century. But in the meantime, Emmanuel Macron comes to meetings and say, well, the reason why Africa is not moving forward is because Africans are making too much babies.
I always say, please present me the lady who decided, being perfectly educated, to have 7, 8, 9 children. And this is not teaching African people from New York. This is a pure bullshit to say that.
But in the meantime, you get very upset when you say, okay, leave our country. Since you guys are helping us, we don't want your help. Go back. They get very angry. And that's why they want to fight the Russians, because they feel like the Russians are pushing them out. I mean, if like nobody wants people to be ungrateful. If you feel like you're helping people and they're not grateful, you just forget about them, right? But why are you upset that the people you're helping are not being grateful? You just leave them. You know what I mean? Let me know how you feel about this. I hope we learned something today. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you. This is family. Click on the button, subscribe, so we can see each other every single day. We come every single day. Drop your comment before you leave. It's always a pleasure. It costs you nothing, but it's very pleasurable for us. God bless.